Good morning. Welcome back to Create, Share, Inspire podcast. I'm Kristin Omdahl, and we are here live in Southwest Florida in my studio this morning. And the reason we are in my studio this morning is because I have some specific things that I want to help you with and teach you. And what else? That's it, I guess. The weather's not bad. It's not too hot out. There's lots of other things that we could have done, but I released the Larissa scarf pattern this morning, and due to the nature of the type of chart that this pattern uses, which actually has multiple colors, show you right here. Because of that, I thought it would be a very good idea to get in the studio and start drawing on the board how this type of pattern works. It's very different. If you've never done continuous crochet or seamless crochet, or it's called lots of different things, but basically it's creating crochet motifs and joining them as you go without cutting yarn between the motifs, which is, if you've never done it before, it's amazing, but it also comes with its own learning curve. So I have not been saying hello. So sorry, everybody. Let me scroll back and see where that started. Hi, Joe. Good morning, Grace and Lisa, Christine, Thea, Pamela, Judy, Kiranjeet, Kimberly, Edna, Judy, Sharon, Diane, Susie, Marcia, Donna, Lorraine, Thea, Carrie, Carla, Kathy, Camille, Pamela. I'm caught up. Yay. Hi, Val. Thank you, Susie. I love my blouse too. It's very sheer, which is my favorite way to wear a blouse. I love sheer blouses so much. And it has a little bit of lace detailing on it, and I also love the pleats in the front. It's a little too sheer to not wear with a camisole underneath, but I wore it this way specifically to do the photo shoot for this scarf this morning, which I did backlit in my backyard. So if anybody knows what that means regarding photography, I shot everything with the sun behind me because I wanted to be able to see that glow of seeing through the blouse from behind, so you could see where my arm and my side ended. I thought it was just an interesting texture to see in the photos, and you'll see when you go see the pattern page. I forgot to share the link, but since I'm here in the studio, I can share it with you. Here's the link to the pattern, and you can see all the photos that I took this morning. I did it all in my backyard, which I always do, or not always, but I like to do. Hi, Proverbs and Jackie, Geraldine, good morning. Thanks, Christine. I love to wear all white. I don't know why, but I do. And I think it's a great way to showcase, and whether you wear all of any solid color, it's always a great way to showcase texture and color when you're trying to show off something that you handmade, right? So I thought this was a great way to showcase, and different. When we talked about this pattern several times over the last couple of weeks as I've been making it, I talked about the fact that the colors in here I thought were going to go really well with dark denim, which is what I wear a lot, but I thought for something different for the photo shoot, just to change things up, I wore it over all white. So I have on white jeans and the white blouse, but if I were actually going out, I would wear a jean jacket over this, and then I think that blue would tie in really nicely as well. Someone also mentioned the other day that this might be a great belt, and yes it is. I did show one photo in the photo shoot, and you can see that on the pattern page of it worn as a belt, and I have to say I really like that. I would definitely wear this as a belt. I showed it as a headscarf too. I don't know if my hair is styled for a headscarf this morning. I wasn't crazy about the way it looked on me as a headscarf, but I do think that this would make a great headscarf. So if you are into headscarves, I think it looks great that way. I love it as a belt. It ended up being 60 inches wide, or 60 inches long by 6 inches wide, which is phenomenal for a one ball project in Be So Sporty Bling yarn. Be So Sporty Bling yarn is 300 yards, and we got this size scarf out of 300 yards. I think that's pretty amazing. So you could definitely wear this as a long scarf. I can barely get it in camera wearing it long. I think it looks really nice draped around the neck so that you've got a little bit of a cowl thing going on here. You could actually keep wrapping it and tuck it and make it a cowl if you wanted. You could fold it in half. I mean, you know how to wear scarves. There's so many different ways to wear a scarf, but the drape's amazing. That little bit of silver with the bamboo yarn has a nice sparkle to it. This is colorway Meteor Shower. You can find that on my website as well. Thank you, Judy, for posting links. I appreciate it. So, oh, and what else? I wanted to do another silly little demonstration today too. Maybe we'll start there and then we'll go into the motifs. We talked several days ago about the fact that if you're going to modify a pattern from a top to a longer tunic or to a skirt, that it's really important to figure out if it's a pattern that's going to need modifying or not. If the top pattern is A-line already, it has some extra width at the bottom, which is fine, which is what you want. If it is an A-line top, you can most likely keep going and make it as long as you want. If it is straight, I want to show you a demonstration with a tape measure why that won't work without modification. Okay, so we make patterns based on our bust size, which generally speaking is the same as our hip size. Fine, no problem. But if you ever notice that dresses, unless they're super short micro mini skirts, if they are longer than that, you need movement to be able to what? Spread your legs, right? So depending on how wide you want to spread your legs, that doesn't sound right. Is it called your gait, I think, when you're walking? Think about how much movement you need to be able to walk. You don't want to have to walk like this because your dress is too tight. So I want to start by showing you so I normally would make a 36-inch bust top. Let's say that I made it straight and didn't add any movement for walking. Okay, there's 36 inches. Okay, we'll I can barely fit it around my thighs. Look at how tight I'd have to walk. Right? So let's move it up to 40 inches. Let's see what 4 inches does. Obviously 36 inches, I would fall down more. I would more likely fall down than I would be able to walk. God forbid I needed to run. Let's see. 40 inches, I think would be the minimum. Still, it's tight with a small step, but I would go more than that. So let's do another 4 inches. There we go. See, I can walk now. So I know it's a silly demonstration, and I know I said some silly phrases in there, but I thought it would be best to demonstrate that with the tape measure so you could really see what a difference a couple of inches makes. Does that make sense? Thanks, Carla. That made sense to you. Good. Lisa says yes too. Judy too. Oh, good. Good. I'm glad. Hopefully it was a little funny to look at too. I thought it was going to be funny to try. I wanted it to look very difficult to walk when I used my regular bust measurement around my legs. You know, if you can't entertain yourself, what are you doing, right? So I've actually been looking forward to doing this for days, and I've been carrying around my tape measure, even though I've forgotten a couple of times to do it. As soon as I thought of it, I was very excited to show you guys, because you know I like to make you laugh at my expense too. You know, it's always fun to get people laughing in the morning. All right, does anybody have any questions about that before we move on? Thank you, Manon. Good, seeing a lot of yeses. Great, wonderful. Nothing makes me happier as a teacher than seeing everybody understand the lesson. Yay. Yes, very hard to walk in straight pin skirts. Carla, it all depends on what kind of skirt you're looking for. So it would depend on if you're looking for something slim fitted, if you're looking for something that's A-line, if you're looking for a full skirt. You can also add vents, right? Like a slit in the back or vents on the side. There's all kinds of ways to put ease in a skirt to allow movement. It depends on what look you're going for. So the ratio would be totally different for an A-line or for a full skirt or even for a pencil skirt. And if you've noticed, pencil skirts often have a slit in the front or back or vents on the side. And this is exactly why, so that you still have movement. I love pencil skirts. And sometimes they are in a stretchier fabric too. I prefer a pencil skirt or a fitted skirt that's stretchy, because then when you're dealing with stretchy fabrics, that's totally different too. Okay, but that's a great question, Carla, so thanks for asking. Hello, Cocktails and Crochet with Coco. This is your first time joining live. That's great. Nothing cute about stretchy fabric in a skirt. Oh, I like stretchy fabric in a skirt. Depends on what kind of undergarments you have, that's all. Little Spanx makes everything look better. All right, so I thought that I would tape the chart here. Let's see, well that works pretty well on camera. And then I'm gonna grab my board over here. And what I wanna do is explain how to read this chart. So anybody that's interested, let's see, now I'm going to have to try to lift this up. Remember how hard this one is? Let's see if I do it right. Okay, let's try to do it right on the first try this time. Let's see. Is that pretty good? Okay, I think that's pretty good. All right, I'm gonna try to angle this a little bit to the side. Okay, let's see. All right, well, let's look at this one first. So you'll see that, and I'm gonna do tutorial videos for this as well. I just thought that, you know how we talk about the fact that I believe that as an educator or a teacher, the more ways I can show something, the more likely someone is to understand it. So showing a lesson in a variety of ways. So there's written instructions in the pattern, there's a chart. We're going to do a tutorial video, but I thought having a live discussion about it this morning was going to be helpful as well. So you may notice on this chart that there are 3 colors. And it's 3 colors because there's 3 different steps to making these motifs. And that they're also numbered, but they're not numbered by rounds. Each motif is only 1 round, but they're numbered by motifs. So we have our first row of motifs here, number 1, then number 2 through 29 for the scarf, and then number 30. Now, 2 through 29, if you were modifying this pattern at all and you wanted to make this smaller, larger, make something else entirely different, you would change how many times you did this center motif. You're going to do this center motif for as many times as you need to make the size project you're making. So for this particular scarf, we did 4 rows of 30 motifs. Okay, so you know how in Tunisian crochet we pick up stitches and partially work them, and then we don't finish the stitches until the return row. Well, this type of motif construction is a little bit similar to that. Let me find something to point with. Will this be dark enough? Maybe. Okay. So the blue section here is how you begin the motif. When you're working on motifs that you have to start at one point and not finish till another point, you have to start from the outside and work your way in, and then work your way back out again. So the first motif here starts with a chain 8, and that's these 3 chains, then the 5 that form the ring. So we're starting from the outside. We have to work our way into the ring first. So it's chain 8, then slip stitch to the 5th chain from your hook, to form a ring. That's, Grace, that's for all the other motifs. The first motif is only chain 8. The rest of them is chain 9. But thank you. Okay, so it's slip stitch to the 5th chain from your hook to form the chain 5 ring, then chain 3, slip stitch to that first chain at the beginning, and then double crochet in that same space. So it's that first chain 3 that we did before the chain 5 ring, plus the second chain 3 and that double crochet that combined become our first 3 double crochet cluster. You know how when we're doing the beginning of a round, we often do a chain 3 that counts as a double crochet, and if our round starts with 3 double crochet cluster, we do a chain 3 and a 2 double crochet cluster. This is similar to that, but we're borrowing that chain 3 from the beginning of the chain and counting it as a portion of the cluster, plus doing our beginning chain 3 to get the height to start that round. So you can see we're using 2 chain 3s to count as 2 parts of that cluster. Okay, so after, and that's when it starts turning black. So we started with the blue to show how we did our beginning chain and starting the round from the outside working in. Then it turns to black when we're going to do the first portion of the motifs. Remember, think about in Tunisian crochet, we start the stitches and then we finish them later. Same when we're doing a cluster stitch or a decrease stitch. We do half of the stitch and then half of a stitch, and we don't finish all the stitches till they're all done. Well, that's how we're doing motifs here. We're going to do the bottom halves of these motifs, and it's not till we get to the last motif at the end of any given row of motifs that will then come up and finish them across. So as we're doing, I explained what this blue part meant here, and then we went into the black, and as we're doing the black stitches here, we're working partially across the motif. So we do the bottom half of the motif, and then at that point we want to start the next motif. So see how it turns blue then? And this one, so this one had a chain 8, the rest of them start with a chain 9, because we want to have a chain that's left here, and I'll explain that when we come back. We have a chain that's sitting open in between the motifs. It's where we're going to join them when we come back around. So this one starts with a chain 9, so it's chain 9 in blue, slip stitch to the 5th chain from your hook to form the ring, chain 3, slip stitch into the 3rd chain, not the 4th up there, that one we're going to leave for later, slip stitch into the 3rd, so then it's chain 3 in blue, chain 3 in black, then double crochet in the ring, and those 3 combined are the equivalent of our first 3 double crochet cluster. Then we're going to work in pattern to do the partial motif here, and we're going to repeat that step for however many motifs we want in the middle of this row of motifs. So that was motif 1. This would be 2 through 29 for the scarf. You would just keep repeating this until you got as long as you wanted. Then on your last motif for the row, this one is 30. We start with our chain 9 again and get to the center to make our ring. Chain 3, slip stitch to the 3rd chain, double crochet in the ring. We've got our equivalent of our first 3 double crochet cluster. Now we're going to work all the way around the motif and do all of our work to actually make it complete. This is a full motif. Chain 3 cluster, chain 3 cluster, then at the end of the round it's chain 3, single crochet into that chain 1 space between the motifs. You see that? And then notice the color has nothing to do with changing yarn, Christine. This has to do with the construction and the movement of where you're working your motifs. So then the color turns to red so that you can see where you're finishing the motif. So you're working across the tops of those partially worked motifs, then working across to the end of the row. Now, if you were only doing one row of these and making a scarf or a headband, you would work all the way to the 1st chain and slip stitch. See how there's a second slip stitch there? That's where you would be working if you were doing the one row. Now, we're not doing one row, we're doing multiple rows. So you can see here that at the end of this cluster stitch here, we moved up to this motif and then started another row of them, and then working in blue and black across. Then as we finish it, moving to red. Oh, I'm holding this up with my arm. Oh, that got so hard. Sorry, I'm holding it like this. You know when you hold something heavy for too long, your arm cramps? I couldn't do it anymore. All right, let me find something. I was trying to be so strong, and I was like, oh my God, I can't do it anymore. Oh, okay, we'll come back to it. Actually, let's stop and ask, let's see if there's any questions. No, that wasn't comfortable at all. I was just like, whoa, done. Does anybody have any questions so far, though? Isn't this cool? Isn't this great? Now, you can do this, I don't know if for any of you that know my book, Seamless Crochet, I have a whole book on different motifs. Let me go grab it so you can see it. It's, I don't sell it personally. It's published by Interweave Press, and I believe it's out of print, but you could still probably find copies on Amazon or eBay or library or whatever. You'll probably find used copies. But this works for all different types of motifs. And honestly, we could sit in this studio for 12 hours and talk about all sorts of things, because there are motifs in this book where this construction style is done over larger motifs with multiple rounds. And I could even give you examples of what to look for in any motif and see if it's a good candidate for converting it into this type of motif. And I have found that there are many, many, many motifs that I can convert to do this because I can see it. It's not easy to do on every motif, but it is easy to figure out on many motifs. I hope that makes sense, Joe, because Joe asked, once you learn the concept, it's easy to do on all sorts of projects. It is also, if you have a motif that not easy to do, right? You got to do the centers a certain way. What is great about this technique is if you want to join pre-existing motifs without cutting yarn, you could just do the final round around motifs, and that would be a great way to do color work too. You would make the centers all different colors, but then your joining round, as long as you can commit to doing that in one color, you can do this technique on any motif. So let me show you that on the board up here too. Or did we need to go over some more of the stuff? Yeah, we still need to finish this. Okay. Oh, I can lift this higher maybe. We didn't finish the chart. We didn't finish talking about the chart. Is that better? There we go. Then I don't have to hold it up. And if I fold this in, I can come closer too. Just trying to make it work. Bear with me. Okay, so back to the drawing board. Okay, so from here, if you're making another round, you see where it turns blue again. So we don't finish this section of this motif. So the first motif is still only partially done through here, and then we come up here, do our ring, and this is a different kind of a partial. It's even a less, we do a very small portion here. Notice how, because this pattern is offset, the first motif on every other row of motifs has a different amount of stitches, and that's because this is an offset pattern. If it was a straight pattern, it wouldn't do that, but that's another story. See, even more things to talk about. There's so much to talk about with this concept. And so then we come up here, and then the middle motifs, This is, what is it, 32 through 59 would all be done the same way. So you do your blue, then do the black. Now we're joining these. So see how there are slip stitches here. So as you're working that partial motif, after this cluster stitch, you're slip stitching to the adjacent cluster stitch in this motif. Then chain 3, cluster stitch in your ring, then slip stitch to this cluster stitch in this motif. And so you're going to be joining with those slip stitches all the way across to join them to the motifs on the previous row of motifs. And then when we get to our final motif at the end of this row of motifs, we come all the way around, finish the motif, single crochet in the first chain, then work in red to finish all the motifs in the center, and then on the first motif at the beginning of this row, we work to this point and start the blue section again to start the next row of motifs. So this whole section here would be left unworked at this point. So we're going to go from this stitch up to the blue section again. So red follows back to blue, and then as we're working these partial motifs, we're joining them with slip stitches to the previous motifs on the previous row, come around, finish the last motif, then complete the tops of the motifs in the center of the row. And then when we get to this point on the first motif, red follows blue, we come up here and then start this motif, work these motifs partially while joining them to the motifs below, come all the way around, and then finish the tops of these motifs. Now, this is a scarf that is 4 rows of motifs, so it is at the end of this motif that we do complete it, right? And then at that point, we come back and finish up that side of the first column of motifs. Come all the way back down to our original motif and slip stitch to join in the first chain at the beginning. Isn't that great? Some of you are familiar with this technique, some of you are not. Some of you might just be getting a refresher on it. How would you know when to change yarn color when following a chart pattern if you did multiple color? This doesn't work for multiple colors because this is not cutting yarn, right? So if you're going to do something where you don't cut yarn, that would be defeating the purpose. So this would be I'm not going to do a live demo, Sharon, because that would require an overhead shot. I will do a tutorial video where you'll see an overhead shot of doing this. That would be much more beneficial from a teaching standpoint. I thought that it was more interesting at this point to talk about how to read this. Oh, good. Christine gets it now. Great. Now, but if you wanted to do color work for this, how you could do that by doing your motifs in different colors. Let's see if I can get some different colors. So let's say you wanted to do a project where you're doing some green motifs and some red motifs and some blue motifs. Okay, so let's say you wanted to do a project where you're doing colorful motifs, but you want to join them at the final round in a one color. You can do that seamlessly. So let's start with this first motif here. We would join here. Let's just pretend that we're doing like a chain 3 single crochet mesh join. So we do our chain 3 across to there. Then actually, you wouldn't join there. We do our chain 3 out this way, and then the chain 3 for this one, then come around. And then work across there. And then come across here. And then we'd be joining to this one. joining to that one. There, does that make sense? Did that even look right? Let me see. So we started here, we did our joining round across the bottom here, then chained over to this one, joined along the bottom here, chained over to this one, joined along the bottom, then did our return round across the top, joined in between, and then this one we didn't come all the way to finish, we had to start the next round, so we left this one partially unfinished still, chained up to this one, then as we're joining these we have to join to the ones below now too, and then you come across, join to this one below, and then we come across and finish these, and then because we're done with this one after 2 rounds, then we come down. You don't finish that last side until you've done all your rounds, all your rows of motifs. So if we had multiple rows of motifs, we wouldn't do this side until the very end. But again, if you still wanted to do this in stripes, you could do motifs that were joined. These could be all seamless, right? In red. And then let's say you did a row of blue motifs and you joined and you did all these seamless, right? Coming along here, you would just slip stitch to join to these as you came around, and then you would finish those. So you could still do color work, but you're not doing color work within the actual motifs and joining them. But if you wanted to do color block of, like color blocking color, you would make each section in one color and then join a second section of color. Does that make sense? So it's not that you can't do color work, you just don't, it would defeat the purpose of doing regular color work with this. You can do color block color work, you can do striping color work, as long as each section of seamless crochet is done in its entirety, and then you can add other sections and then join them as you go to the appropriate adjacent motifs. Yeah, that makes sense? Okay, good. Yay. Does anybody have any other questions? So the pattern's available now. You can download it on my website for $1.99. Would row 5 be a repeat of row 3? Yes. Yes, Coco, that is correct. So if you were making this longer, let's say you wanted to do this scarf that way, then yes, because this is offset, you would keep repeating the last 2 rows of motifs. If this wasn't an offset pattern, it would be different. But because it's an offset pattern, yes. And just remember that the sides of the first motifs at the beginning of each row are not completed until the very end of the project. There's exceptions to that. If you were making this in the round, then it's different. I've taught how to make seamless crochet motifs as hats and cowls before as well, so joining them in the round is different. I've also done top-down raglan shaping in this for garments and for shawls, and so that's just a little more advanced, and I feel like what I'd really like to do is just start here. So I started with this project to tackle this whole subject so that I use the simplest of motifs to try to get the concept down first, and then as everybody enjoys it or wants to see more applications of it, we can do lots of other projects this way too. I just thought may as well start simple first and then we can grow from there. Let's see if anybody has any more questions. I mean, it's a huge, huge, huge subject, but if there's any questions about anything that I've talked on so far, there've been great questions so far. I appreciate everyone's questions. It helps so much, and never feel shy about asking your questions, because if you have questions, chances are there are other people that have the same questions too. Oh, thanks, Judy. Judy just posted links to the scarf pattern and the yarn that I use for the pattern, so you can grab the yarn if you want. Got lots of beautiful colors in Be So Sporty Bling yarn, and the scarf, the Larissa Crochet Motif Scarf Pattern, is a 1-ball project. So really awesome. Great gift. Works up quickly. Thank you, Coco. I'm glad you think so. Ah, Linda, yes, I did a skinny scarf in this motif in that book. That is right. We styled it as a belt in the book, and I also wore it as a headband many times too. Yes, Pamela, it opens the doors to lots of interesting projects, including, like I said, if you have motifs that are already made and you want to join them quickly, this is a great way to take existing motifs and join them quickly, because sometimes it seems like a dreaded project, right? If you have, because I know a lot of people just collect motifs over time. You're like, oh, what am I going to do with all these? Seamless crochet is the quickest way to join existing motifs together. All right, well, I don't see any more questions, so I guess we can stop there for now. But if you decide you have questions later on, you want to come back over and pop into the comments, please feel welcome to do so. And like I said, I'll be doing a tutorial video on this particular scarf very, very soon, and I think that will really help you to follow along the pattern better. But I hope this gave you a beginning concept of how to read this chart. Now the pattern also comes with line by line written instructions as well, so everything's there. You can absolutely follow along and do it on your own, but I will be adding a supplemental video to help you get the concept down as well. Thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend a few minutes here with me. I hope you enjoyed all the show and tell, chatting with me and everyone else. If you like the podcast, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already subscribed, the red subscribe button is down there. And if you click the bell button next to it, you can be notified every time I go live or upload a new video. Let us make time to create, share, and inspire today and every day. Have a great day, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.